It was a cold February night in Blackwood, a small town in Maine known for its unsettling past. The town, covered in a thick blanket of snow, was preparing for Valentine's Day, a time for love and celebration. But this year, something sinister lurked in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The townspeople had always whispered about the Blackwood curse, a tale that had been passed down for generations. It was said that every 25 years on Valentine's Day, an unspeakable horror would awaken, preying on those who dared to celebrate love. Most dismissed it as an urban legend, but this year marked the 25th anniversary of the last known tragedy, and some couldn't shake the feeling that history was about to repeat itself. At the heart of this tale were 5 close friends: Michael, Sarah, David, Jessica, and Brian, who had all grown up together in Blackwood. They had heard the stories of the curse but never believed them. To them, it was nothing more than a creepy bedtime story designed to scare kids. So when Jessica suggested throwing a Valentine's Day party at an old abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, the group eagerly agreed. The mansion, known as the Holloway Estate, had been deserted for decades. It once belonged to the Holloway family, who mysteriously vanished without a trace on Valentine's Day in 1925. No bodies were ever found, only a single message scrawled in blood on the walls: "Love is a lie." Excited by the prospect of adventure, the friends gathered supplies, candles, food, drinks, and decorations, and set out for the mansion. The journey there was eerie, the narrow roads lined with towering trees that seemed to close in around them. As they arrived, the mansion loomed before them, its windows like empty eye sockets staring into the abyss. The air was thick with an unexplainable tension, but none of them voiced their unease. Inside, the mansion was colder than expected. Dust covered every surface, and the scent of decay lingered in the air. They set up their decorations, lit candles, and played music, trying to make the atmosphere more inviting. Slowly, the initial unease faded, and they began to enjoy themselves. As the night progressed, strange occurrences began. The candles flickered wildly without wind. Shadows moved in the corners of their vision, and whispers echoed through the halls. Sarah, ever the skeptic, laughed it off, blaming it on old pipes and drafts. But when David suddenly screamed from the kitchen, the laughter died instantly. They rushed to find David standing motionless, his face pale. He pointed at the old wooden table. Carved into its surface were words that hadn't been there before. "Leave now!" A nervous chuckle escaped Brian. "Okay, very funny. Which one of you did this?" No one answered. The tension in the room grew thick. Jessica, trying to ease the fear creeping in, suggested they continue the party. Hesitantly, they agreed, though the sense of being watched never faded. Midnight struck. The music stopped abruptly. The candles blew out, plunging them into darkness. Then the sound of footsteps echoed from upstairs, heavy, deliberate. "We're not alone," Michael whispered. Panic set in. They grabbed their phones, but there was no signal. The front door, which had been left slightly ajar, was now bolted shut. The footsteps grew louder, descending the grand staircase. Jessica, trembling, whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. Then a voice, low, guttural, replied, "Love is a lie." A cold shiver ran down their spines. The voice seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. A figure emerged at the foot of the stairs, a tall, gaunt man in tattered clothing, his eyes hollow and devoid of life. He raised a bony finger and pointed at Sarah. "You should have left." Sarah let out a blood-curdling scream as the figure lunged toward her. The room erupted into chaos. They scattered, each running in different directions through the labyrinthine halls of the mansion. Michael and Brian found themselves in the basement, where they stumbled upon an old journal. Flipping through its brittle pages, they discovered it belonged to Samuel Holloway, the last owner of the mansion. His final entry read, "The curse is real. It feeds on love, twisting it into torment. If you are reading this, run. Run before it finds you." Meanwhile, Jessica and David found an old servant's passageway. The walls were lined with portraits of the Holloway family, but as they passed, the eyes in the paintings seemed to follow them. Then, without warning, David was yanked backward into the darkness. His screams echoed, then abruptly stopped. Jessica turned, heart pounding, but David was gone. In his place, a single red rose lay on the floor, its petals dripping with blood. Upstairs, Sarah ran through the grand hall, pursued by the monstrous entity. She reached a locked door, banging frantically. The creature closed in, whispering sinisterly, "You cannot escape. Love brought you here. Love will end you." Just as it reached for her, Michael and Brian burst in, wielding an old iron cross they had found in the basement. The creature recoiled, screeching in agony. "The curse!" Brian yelled. "It's tied to this house. We have to destroy it." Racing against time, they regrouped and set fire to the mansion, the flames consuming its dark history. The creature let out an ear-piercing wail as the fire spread, its form twisting in agony before vanishing into the smoke. As dawn broke, the survivors stood outside, watching the Holloway estate burn to the ground. The horror was over, or so they thought. Years later, on another Valentine's Day, a new couple moved to Blackwood. As they settled into their new home, they found an old charred journal buried in the backyard. The final entry had changed. "The fire did not end it. Love is still a lie, and I am coming back." The couple never celebrated Valentine's Day again, and neither did anyone in Blackwood.